Well, this is right at the beginning of the movie. We've spent quite a lot of time outside in New York, and the world is very hostile. It's incredibly hot, it's noisy. And so the idea of this scene really is that when she walks in, it's the sort of complete antithesis to the world that she's just been in, that feels frightening. And then she comes into this oasis of quiet where she has a moment, possibly the only moment, to sort of sit back and be a voyeur and look at other people.
The way to put it.
It was really a sort of geographical choreography, this scene, because it was all about the space between these two women. Like, it wasn't interesting to me to have a busy room full of people and then to sort of glimpse Claire through that. It felt much more interesting to be very exposed in a very big room that's completely empty, cavernous, and has this sort of strange oasis-like sound quality. And this is a moment where she is observing, whilst also being a little bit nervous about being observed because she's in a place where she shouldn't be. That was my invention, to have a couple that are very overtly sexualized and doing too much public display of affection. And then the antithesis of that, a couple who are beyond that in their life, or not a couple necessarily, but who are sat together in a very sort of poised and rigid sort of way, not even speaking, because those are the polarizations that Irene's trapped between. This kind of rigidity and Claire awakens this sensuality. So the scene is actually entirely sensual, whether it's the sound of her voice or the wind chimes or the tinkling of the cups or the rubbing of the stockings. It's a sensual experience.
You know, Rebecca articulated that really brilliantly with, you know, the shot when I'm looking at her legs that you can also hear in the sound design. You can hear the stockings, which makes it a sort of really sonic, visceral experience.
All right.
All right.
And that is, of course, the moment where she also sees Claire. In this moment where she thinks she is at peace, where she's not being observed, there is a woman who she doesn't know staring right at her.
She's thinking and feeling, why is this woman looking at me? Is there too much powder on my face? Is there something wrong with me? Going from indignant to deciding, well, I'll just look back at her.
What's interesting with Claire is her gaze and how direct it is and how disarming that can be. Because actually, when you think about it, people who have very direct gazes are quite intimidating. It doesn't matter how soft their voice is or what they look like or how small or big they are.
And in this moment, they're both in a performance, in a place where they are performing, and they both know something about the other one, and it's about, why are you looking at me? What do you want?
Pardon me, I don't mean to stare, but I think I know you.
I'm afraid you're mistaken.
No, of course I know you, Renee. You look just the same.
When Claire finally walks over, there's like a sequence of these very sort of confrontational shots with their faces directly in the center of the frame, and they're completely clean.
Don't you know me?
You're totally seeing through Irene's eyes.
Really.
And therefore, you feel as accosted as she is.
I'm afraid I can't seem to place. Claire?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Up until this point in the movie, you're sort of a lot over Irene's shoulder or behind her. And when you do decide to center a face with nothing else blurring the frame, it's incredibly confronting and a little unnerving. And you don't feel like you really know where you are. And from a movie making perspective, as a viewer, like, it's a little upsetting almost. And that moment, I always like this moment very much between these two very clean singles that are very sort of almost like a 2D.
Just a small thing about this scene. For me, it's like a falling in love scene. You know, a kind of twisted falling in love scene, but not in a bad way. But for me, it's a microcosm of their relationship, that when they look at one another, they can sort of disrobe one another just by looking. And everything else falls away, everything else. And it's just the sound of the other person, the smell of the other person. It's like this deep fascination, but also mistrust, but also can't look away. Is this person safe? But I like being looked at them and with them. And for me, that's that sets the tone for the relationship between the two.
so much of the tension that exists in the movie is erotic, like whether it's, you know, literal or not, or obvious or not, but it is a sort of, there is a tension that comes with sort of suppressed longings, whether it's longing to be something else or longing for something sexually. It doesn't really matter. For me, this was really a pivotal scene because it was a way of setting up the movie as a suspense thriller, as a psychological suspense thriller that doesn't play on, you know, potential murderers or really obviously frightening things, but on how you are looked at and how you are perceived and the sort of discomfort of that. We've just seen Claire get her way into the house the previous day and spends a lot of time with Irene and sort of corner her into allowing her to come to the dance the following night.
Thought you might have fallen asleep.
No. Out on time, for once.
Oh, good.
Up until this point, the conversations that have happened in their bedroom have been dismissive and angry, and now you see Irene trying to lightly tell her husband that it's no big deal when we know precisely it is a big deal.
Claire's coming. Claire Bellew.
That crazy woman, Claire?
There's also the fact that most of the scene for Irene is taking place in front of a mirror, which was really crucial for us in terms of trying to find ways for Irene to reveal her inner life.
She surprised me with a visit yesterday.
Yesterday? Why in the world didn't you tell me?
This thing that Irene is feeling is this idea of a woman as another woman, that just by being who that woman is, they make you feel small. And Claire's beauty makes her interrogate and weigh her own, I think.
Be nice, huh?
I highly doubt it.
I mean, you be nice to her.
I will be polite.
Up until this point, we have been very much on her perspective, how she sees the world. And then we break it when Brian lies down on the bed and stares at the ceiling. So yes, it's a metaphor for there's a rumble coming, there's a little crack in the architecture of their marriage. There are problems there already.
Quit hovering. Go wait for me downstairs.
But we're also thinking about how things are being seen, how Brian is seeing something versus how Irene is seeing something.
Wait, I'm sorry. I love you.
Boy, you are nervous.
During the course of this scene, there's also a sort of a play on perspective. You know, one of the tricks of the film is trying to reveal that the person that you think is reliably telling you the story is actually having a breakdown and isn't seeing the world clearly. And that continues as she goes down the stairs, because in the mirror, she's seeing them standing very close together. It's immediately frightening. And then she turns the corner and she realizes that her judgment was just off and actually they're standing much further apart. There's all of that confusion.
You may be right.
What I really love about this scene is the ways in which you reveal truth through how a character chooses to recount information that you as the audience already know to their spouse. It's very revealing of both of their relationships and the undercurrents, and also what this person who hasn't even been introduced to her husband yet is already creating.
It was really apparent on this film that our characters are created as much by the other actors as they are by us. And I know that's like, should be, that's without, should go without saying, but actually I don't think we think about that enough, of how deeply collaborative filmmaking really is.